And then if I
Yeah.
look at the second part, which is the manufacturing part, right? So that's where we talk about the fabs, right? Like TSMC and Intel and Samsung, which are currently the top three fab companies. And then and then outside after the fabbing
And
of
explain
silicon.
fab. If you were to explain, behind the technicality of it to a 10-year-old, how do you describe the semiconductor ecosystem, right? Because there's a lot of evolution when it comes to getting that semiconductor made as well, right? So what are the key parts of value chain? How should one understand the sector?
Yeah, sure, no, I think it's it's a challenging. I would say that in the sense that semiconductor as a manufacturing industry, it's one of the most complicated setup that there could be, right? In terms of how it is designed, just in terms of the ecosystem that is needed, and then also the kind of instrument and machine that is needed. So let me try to break it down so that we can talk to the different aspect of it. So again, it all starts from, so to speak, sand, right? So that's where the silicon that we talk about comes from, sand, which is then built into a wafer, right? Uh, so maybe I'll uh, kind of talk through it in terms of different aspect of the cycle, right? So there is the cycle which is the design part of design, like silicon, and then there's a manufacturing cycle, right? So in the design cycle, then you have elements around what is the product level requirement that is driving what silicon you want to build, right? So in that product requirement, then based on the product requirement, it gets broken down into what kind of IPs or what kind of features, right, that has to be built in. And as part of that, then there are companies like AMD, Nvidia, Qualcomm, right, which are traditional chip companies. So they're like, kind of the whole business model is designing chips. And then there are companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, right, which are product companies, but then they also have a lot of requirement of different kind of silicon, right? So in that ecosystem of designing, there is a lot of partnership that happens where the product companies might partner with a chip company, right, to be able to give them the features that they want, and then they will design it. And then in the same aspect of IP and design, there are a lot of IP companies that we hear about. I think ARM as a CPU IP, then Synopsys and Cadence that provides a bunch of other IPs, right? So it's an ecosystem where each partner is trying to develop something that they can then replicate across different industry and different application, right? So that's the design part of it. Again, I've given a very high level overview. There are a lot more that goes into just the aspect of
Of
designing,
course.
not from. And then if I
Yeah.
look at the second part, which is the manufacturing part, right? So that's where we talk about the fabs, right? Like TSMC and Intel and Samsung, which are currently the top three fab companies. And then and then outside after the fabbing of
And explain
silicon.
fab.
Sure. So fab is where the silicon raw material that goes in gets fabricated, so to speak, right? So once a company designs what it wants to be manufactured, then they send that design blueprint to the fab, which is TSMC or Samsung, and then that's where the manufacturing of the design happens in the form of a wafer, which is then broken down into die. So that's kind of the start of the manufacturing process. So from a design, the blueprint is sent to the manufacturing fab, so to speak, which is TSMC, and then that's where the manufacturing starts. And that's the first step, because then after the die is created, then you need to still package it so that it could have the different power points to be connected on a PCB, and then before that, then you need to test it. So those are the other aspect of manufacturing, which we call as OSAT, which is again testing and then packaging of the die, right? And then again, there's a huge ecosystem of partners around that, because there is a lot of different kind of materials, different testing protocols, different test instrument that is needed to build that from the design to the final product. A lot of those steps happen in the manufacturing.
And one term we typically hear these days is also fabless companies. Explain to us what that means in this context of design and manufacturing, what those companies are doing.
Sure. So Yeah, so fabless comes from the fact that companies who don't own the fab. So that's why they call fabless. So as I was talking earlier, so we have this ecosystem of companies which are chip companies like Broadcom, Nvidia, AMD, right? So these companies, their whole business model is to design and sell chips, right? But they are not the one who are also operating the fab because they are not owning the manufacturing side of it. They're only owning their design and then the kind of getting the design built and then selling it to customer. Whereas on the other hand, there are companies like Intel, right, who also has products that they sell and they also own the manufacturing of it. So they are like, so they can be called, they are fab companies where, or they have their own fab. And then TSMC is one company which is kind of, I would say, one of the most important companies in the whole ecosystem because they don't sell any product, right? They only service as a manufacturing partner to almost all the silicon companies, right? So, and then currently they are the one who has the technology to design the most cutting edge. We call it in terms of the nanometer or the lower than the nanometer, the more cutting edge it is. So they are currently the one who is designing the most innovative and most cutting edge fab technology, right? So yeah, so that's the kind of the distinction. So you have companies that don't own the fab, but still silicon companies, and they're called fabless.